Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Farm Frolics, released in 1941. It's the 326th in the series and it's directed by Bob Clampett. You can find this on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 5 DVD set. That's the cut version that's been around for pretty much ages since they redid it as a blue ribbon. However, what I'm using is a fresh scan that was done on a 35mm print that not only has the opening titles that were originally there, but it also has a scene that was cut since the release. I'll have a link to that particular file, so if you want to see the cartoon, you can click that link and see it in full. But just to give you a brief summary of what goes on here, all this short is that it's a Tex Avery-esque type of short where it's a day in life of the farm and we see all sorts of animals and we see a lot of gags. Some good, some not so good. But, of course, that's all an opinion thing. But anyway, that's pretty much what happens in this short. So first up, you're going to see a re-edit of the original audio commentary I did with my good friends Blue Genocide, who also helped edit this particular review, and my good friend Austin Kelly. You'll hear some new thoughts from me, and then you'll hear from my good friend Luke Perkins, who wanted to add his thoughts on this short, and of course a conclusion. So without further ado, let's get into it. And with me today are my good friends Blue Genocide and Austin Kelly. Say hi, guys.
Hi.
Couldn't think of your name for a second.
I do find it interesting in the high definition version of this. For that brief moment, the back legs look like they were actually painted as part of the background. It's really,
It was
really
probably
bizarre.
just because they were on a different cell. That's like, they just accidentally painted them with a slightly different shade.
This is the second of two color cartoons that was made with Clampett's original unit, the one that were doing all the Porky Pigs with him, the ones that he clearly enjoyed making. There's a lot to like about this one. Are there any animators you can identify in this one, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, so far everything we've seen is Norm McCabe stuff, and that carries through to the end of this gag. You can tell by what we call double eyebrows, like he draws two eyebrows over each eye. Also, the big oval-shaped eyes, and the characters like jerking their head like towards the screen, and a bit of nice perspective animation.
I gotta also point out that we got a Dick Tracy reference here, which was very, very popular at the time, and Clampett would end up reusing that idea for one of his greatest cartoons that he ever directed, which is one of my favorites anyway. This feels like yet another Tex Avery type spot gag cartoon, so I don't know, did you like this one, Blue? You said you've seen this one a lot of times.
Well, this one's actually in the public domain, and I've seen, crappy... You can say crappy here, right?
On this network, you can.
Okay, I was just making sure.
Yeah, Simpsons reference there, but go on.
Yeah, I've seen this one a million times because... I'm sorry, I'm watching the gag right now because I know that's something really good.
Wow. I love the animation of that.
Yeah, no, it's great.
But I do want to point out that great weasel gag was John Kerry animation. You can tell by those long black pupils and that kind of bean-shaped mouth. And I think this might be John as well.
It's kind of interesting because I always thought that this was a Tex Avery one, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, it's an easy one to make, especially with the fact that this is a blue ribbon reissue, so of course you don't see the credits, so one would assume that this is a Tex Avery one. And here's a bit weird, this ant one, because isn't there usually like a queen or something, and I didn't know ants would couple up kind of thing. But it's a Henry it's a gag that was actually used in the previous Clampett color cartoon, and he would reuse that same gag in the book review as well.
This is my favorite gag in the entire short.
It's a really good one, and I love the Clampett cat. I mean, even in some of his weaker cartoons, the Porkies and that, but when you see the Clampett cat, you forget about all of that. It's really good.
I thought some of the timing in this cartoon was a little bit slow. Like in the weasel scene, I thought it was a little weird how slow he took.
And now we're going to see a payoff on this pig gag, which, I don't know, I didn't think was too funny. I don't think it's a bad payoff or anything, but I will say, if you're a parent like me, the face that the mother pig makes is sort of the face that my wife's made and what I've made. And no, I'm not calling my wife a pig or anything. That's pretty much my face sometimes, just like, all right. So that was the original commentary, and the whole thing's in full anyway, because this short's in the public domain, so I've just left it up. And that's, of course, a commentary based on the Blue Ribbon re-edit, and that was not only done for the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 5, but then it was actually shown in HD on a previous streaming service. It used to be HBO Max, now it's called Max. So, yeah, they keep changing things around. But in any case, the cool thing about this discovery is that, while it's certainly not life-changing, it's always nice to see some of the original intent. So this one has two things. One, it's got the original titles, which, look, I'm not as fanatical about getting the original titles as much as some other people that I know. It's a crazy thing to be fanatical about, but anyway, it's still great to see the shorts as originally directed before they were butchered up for reissue. And in this case especially, when we see the opening, it uses an artist's hand, and this is probably the nicest looking part of the short, if I'm being completely honest. Just the pencil drawings that turn into the farm scenery. I do have to wonder whose hand that is that's actually being shown. And of course we get the full song as well, that's played in the opening versus the smaller version that was just where the last bit just plays as soon as the actual Blue Ribbon titles finish up. But there was also one scene that was, well, it was thought to be lost, and then about, I think, a decade ago or thereabouts, a print was discovered. I think various prints were discovered over the years with this particular scene in it, but essentially it's a grasshopper scene, and look, the gag's not perhaps the greatest, but it's still interesting to see something that was thought to have been lost for a while. So you've got the whole thing with the grasshopper, and as per the narrator, hey, let's watch this grasshopper spit, and he's like, nope, the Hays Code won't let me do it, and that's a reference to the fact that indeed you couldn't spit in a movie and to have that scene past the Hays Code at the time, whether it was in animation or in live action. And Clampett would even do that gag again in A Tale of Two Kitties, where he'll be like, I'd do it, but the Hays Code won't let me, and you know, that sort of thing. So I'm guessing that Clampett really didn't like how Hays Code was quite restrictive in those days. So looking at the short itself, and I did mention in the beginning of the audio commentary back then that it was interesting seeing the horse, that the back legs just seemed to be part of the background for some weird reason. And also to mention that it looks like it was just on a different layer, but it looks like it's on the actual background. It's kind of weird. And then when the horse moves, the whole thing seems to be animated. So I don't know what happened there, but yeah, it's a bit bizarre. And in fact, there's also later on, there's a weird cut.
Here is a group of cute little piggies playing in the mud,
where the narrator says mud, and then it's like there was a quick cut there. So it appears to be in all prints, including the print used for this particular restoration. Now, when the horse dances, and of course there's this nice gag played against the different types of music, like the Old Grey Mare and, of course, William Tell Overture, but we then see Eddie Cantor. So the horse just morphs into Eddie Cantor, and I like how the hooves change into hands and feet. Yeah, and it's not the first time that Eddie Cantor will be featured by Bob Clampett. He was actually featured in the short Slap Happy Pappy, and he was actually the main focus of it too, which he was a great entertainer in his time. Of course, we then got the dog scene, and I've got to say, the animation here looks really good, and how realistic this dog looks until, of course, the very end when he gets excited about Dick Tracy, which was a smash hit as far as comic strips go, and he has a rogues gallery that rivals even Batman's rogues gallery. And the whole line, I can hardly wait to see what happens in Dick Tracy, that would end up being reused later on via the Great Piggy Bank robbery. So we get to the pigs, which I might as well say it now. I'm not the biggest fan of this punchline, but I'm guessing that some of these gags would have been way more funnier to people who are familiar with what a lot of these references are. So in this case, you have Rule 3, oh, what are these pigs waiting for? What are they waiting for? And all that. And then at the end, it's pretty much, oh yeah, they were just waiting for dinner, and they go to the mother pig, and the mother pig ended up doing a Zazu Pitts impression, and she was an actress at the time. So that would have been probably more funny with people knowing that, hey, that's a Zazu Pitts line, versus now where it's like, oh, alright, sure. Then again, people might find it funny, but I thought it was just, Again, so that's the thing about these spot gag cartoons. Some gags work, some don't, and it'll be different for different people. And if we look at the weasel gag, and as Austin rightly mentions in the track, the timing is a little bit off here. I felt it was a little bit flat. It was interesting. I like the animation in it, of course. This is a Clampett short after all, but it did fall a little bit flat. But we get the response at the end, don't do that. That's like a Joe Penner type reaction, and Joe Penner was a comedian at the time. Now, the interesting thing about the owl gag, again, I didn't care for it, just who, but he then says, who's your hoodie? And the audiences at the time would have gotten a big kick out of that, because who's your hoodie? Okay, if we go back to the Pepsodent show starring Bob Hope, you had Joe Colonna, and he would basically do all this crazy stuff on this radio show. And one of the things he did, he was part of an interview with the violinist Yehudi Menuhin. And during that interview, he would always say, who's your hoodie? He would say that, and it just became this weird catchphrase. And he would do that even with guests that weren't Yehudi. And it's now more or less referencing a mysteriously absent person. It's truly bizarre. I guess it's as simple as I didn't do it. That kind of just a catchphrase that took off. In fact, in 1940, there was even a song written called Who's Your Hoodie, and it was initially covered by Kay Kaiser and then later on by Cab Calloway. So, there you go. Now we see another gag involving the house being built. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. But the FHA approved reference is just referring to the Federal Housing Administration mortgage loan, where historically it allowed low-income people to borrow money to be able to buy a home. So that's pretty much all that references in that scene. Now, of course, as I mentioned already, we got the newly rediscovered scene, and I do want to mention one thing about that scene. I do like how the flower is shaped like the spittoon. Again, is it a great gag? Nah, but it's definitely one of the better ones here. Then, of course, you have the ant scene where it's like the whole thing with Henry, and that's something Clampett would now use constantly, and especially like in book review, but that comes from the radio program The Aldrich Family. And then we have the gag that my editor, Blue Genocide, is his absolute favourite in this particular short. Yeah, again, as I mentioned in the track, it's kind of cute seeing this cat smiling, all content and all that stuff. But again, I didn't really laugh as loud with that one, but anyway, it's fine. It's fine. I guess I like more the animation in this short versus the actual humour. So, yeah. Now, I've been prattling on and on, so my good friend Luke Perkins is now going to share his thoughts on this short. So, take it away, Luke.
Farm Frolics, released in 1941, is the second Merry Melody that Bob Clampett directed in color. And it's actually the second color Bob Clampett cartoon. Farm Frolics feels like the first true one-off newsreel parody that Bob Clampett fully directed by himself. The other one he did, which was a Crazy Cruise, which would come out a year later, was also another newsreel cartoon, which focuses on going on a cruise and going through all the different exotic locations. That one was finished by Bob Clampett, but it was planned by Tex Avery, and it was unfinished by the time Tex had already left Warner Brothers and went to MGM. But Farm Frolics, he directed by himself. Now that print, the uncut version of the cartoon, finally has been released, I want to talk about that specific scene first, before we get into the other stuff I want to talk about. So, like, the bit with the grasshopper who is chewing and spitting out the tobacco as he's about to spit it out. And then he goes, sorry folks, the Hayes office won't let me do it. It wouldn't matter to the grasshopper anyway because it was later cut off in reissues. But the thing that interests me is before the bit with the grasshopper actually happens, you have this bit with the field mouse who has these big Dumbo ears. And there's a bit where the narrator is like going, hey, what's with you? And the mouse goes, I don't know, Doc. I just keep hearing things. Very punny. But for some reason, I remember in the reissue prints, like, it actually fades out instead of transitioning into another scene. For some reason, part of me could tell that there was possibly a scene cut in between the scene of the field mouse and the ant. And I assumed that the scene with the field mouse actually had a cut punchline because, like, hearing things or something. I assumed it was, like, a World War II reference that would become immediately dated once America joined the Second War and then they cut it off. But no, it was actually a joke with the grasshopper and the Hayes office. So I thought that was really interesting. Another thing I also found really interesting with the uncut version was the opening title sequence, where the off-screen chorus, they're singing, is it Back to the Farm? That's what it's called? I really don't know. But they're singing this song, and in the reissue, half of that song is still playing, but the narrator kind of takes over a bit of that song, and he talks through it. But in the uncut version, where you actually see the hand erase the title, and then draw in the farm, and then it like cut from a sketch to color, they actually let the song finish before the narrator speaks. And it seems like such a minor thing to someone, but when you're so used to watching something from a reissue print, and then you see the original uncut version, it's a whole different experience, I feel like, in my opinion. And that's about it for Farm Frolics. It's a pretty good cartoon, I really like it a lot. I'd give it probably an 8 to 9 out of 10. Nothing really too much stand out, but I enjoy it. And now, I gotta snooze.
Thank you, Luke. So, look, in terms of a rating, look, 6.5 out of 10 is probably what I'm going to give it. I love the animation, and I like the vocals in this, a lot by Mel Blanc, plus the music in the beginning. But this one didn't make me laugh out loud, and I would have mentioned this in a track before. When Clampett is trying to ape Avery, it doesn't work as well. I'm not saying it's an outright failure, any of his spot gag shorts that he ended up doing. In fact, pretty much all the directors in the early 40s tried their hand at spot gag shorts in one way or another. So I don't know if this was just a management thing that, hey, these travelogues that Avery does are so great, we want more, so can you make one for us? So I don't know if it was a mandate, but anyway. When Clampett's left to do his own thing, his shorts are way better. That's my view on it. But is this terrible? No. It's just not that strong of a short that made me laugh out loud. But then again, if you guys like this short more than me, definitely let me know in the comments. I'd definitely like to hear your thoughts on it. But I will say, regardless, it's so great to see the uncut version finally available. Normally I'd play the public domain short straight after the actual review, but in this case, because this is a private restoration that was done versus a corporate one that was done, it would have been released on the disc sets. I'll just have a link to that particular restoration. Definitely check it out. So I thought the end results were pretty good. That'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.